I always thought that if my marriage ever ended, it would be after long discussions, maybe even counseling. Something gradual. Something that made sense. But that's not how it happened. My marriage didn't end with a fight. It didn't end with tears. It ended with a single sentence. We lived in Seattle, Washington, in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside the city, the kind of place where families hosted barbecues on weekends, and everyone pretended to be happy. I thought we were happy too. Until that night, Hannah stood in the doorway, her long brown hair tied back like she was in a rush. She was already wearing her coat, her designer handbag slung over her shoulder. There was no hesitation, no fidgeting, no guilt in her eyes, no sadness, just cold, matter-of-fact indifference. I'm going to meet another man. If you try to stop me, I'll call the police and say you assaulted me. I felt my body go cold. My ears started ringing. My mind was still trying to catch up, still trying to process what she had just said. She stood there, waiting for an answer. A joke. It had to be a joke. Right. But her face didn't change. Hannah, what? My own voice barely sounded like mine. She rolled her eyes. You heard me. I'm done pretending. I deserve better, and I found someone who gives me what I need. So I'm going out, and you're not going to stop me. The casual way she said it, like she was just informing me of a last-minute dinner reservation, made something inside me twist. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something worse. I was numb. For months, I had felt something shift between us. She was distant, always glued to her phone, always making excuses to leave the house. And I ignored it. I convinced myself I was imagining things, that she was just stressed, that maybe we were going through a rough patch. But now, standing in front of me, was a woman who had already moved on. And she wasn't even trying to hide it. I should have said something, done something. But my brain refused to function. She scoffed at my silence. God, don't look so shocked. It's not like you didn't see this coming. And with that, she turned and walked out the door. I stood frozen in place, the silence in the house swallowing me whole. I didn't chase after her. I didn't beg. I just stood there, staring at the empty doorway, feeling my entire world collapse on itself. But as the weight of it all began to sink in, a different thought crept into my mind. If she thinks she's won, if she thinks she's walking away from this without consequences, she's dead wrong. And that's when my phone rang. It was my cousin. Hey man, I got bad news, but also a way to make things right. I didn't answer right away. My fingers hovered over the screen as it buzzed in my palm. I just stood there, frozen, in the quiet aftermath of Hannah's departure. Her words played on repeat in my head. I'm going to meet another man. If you try to stop me, I'll call the police and say you assaulted me. She had said it so casually, so unapologetically. That wasn't just betrayal. That was a threat, a warning that she was ready to ruin me if I didn't comply. And that realization broke something inside me. The call went to voicemail, then a text came through. Pick up, man. You need to hear this. I exhaled sharply, my hands shaking as I finally pressed the call button and brought the phone to my ear. Yeah, my voice was hoarse, like I had swallowed gravel. My cousin Ryan didn't waste time. Hannah's cheating on you, bro. I let out a humorless laugh, rubbing my eyes. Yeah, no kidding. No, I mean she's been at it for months. Maybe longer. And the guy, you're not gonna like this. I sank onto the couch, my chest tightening. Just say it. A pause. Then, it's your boss. My heart stopped. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. The room around me blurred as my brain struggled to process the sheer absurdity of it. Excuse me. Ryan sighed. You heard me. I squeezed my eyes shut. How do you know? Because I saw them together, he said, his voice tight. I was at a bar across town last week, and there they were. All over each other like a couple of teenagers. I wasn't going to say anything until I had proof. But now you need to see it for yourself. A file popped up in our chat. Pictures. Taken from a distance, but unmistakable. My wife. My boss. Kissing. Holding hands. Acting like a couple. And suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights at work. The unexplained expenses. The way she had been growing colder toward me, while I broke my back at the very company where the man she was sleeping with signed my paychecks. Rage bubbled up inside me, but I pushed it down. I had never been the type to react impulsively. No. If I was going to do something about this, it had to be smart. Ryan must have sensed my silence. Listen, I know this is a lot, but I have an idea. A way to get back at both of them without doing anything that could blow back on you. I gritted my teeth. I'm listening. You remember my friend Jason? The tech guy. I nodded, even though Ryan couldn't see me. Jason was an old friend of his, someone who could hack into just about anything given enough time. Well, he owes me a favor. If you want, I can have him dig deeper, get access to her messages, her location, maybe even her finances. And if we find something useful, well, you'll have options. Options. That word hung in the air between us. I had spent years thinking my marriage was built on trust, on love. Now, I realized I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion. And if Hannah thought she could just walk out on me, humiliate me, and leave me with nothing, she had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the phone. Do it. Ryan didn't hesitate. Consider it done. Give me a couple of days, and I'll get back to you. After I hung up, I sat in the dark living room, staring at nothing. I wasn't just heartbroken. I wasn't just betrayed. I was awake. And when Hannah came back home that night, acting like nothing had happened, she had no idea the clock was already ticking. She walked back into the house just after midnight. No guilt, no hesitation. She tossed her purse onto the couch, kicked off her heels, and gave me a quick glance, like I was nothing more than a piece of furniture in the room. I sat in the dim light of the living room, gripping a glass of whiskey I hadn't even touched. She didn't try to explain herself, didn't act surprised to see me still awake. You're up late. She said it casually, walking toward the kitchen. I studied her as she grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. There was no shame in her body language. If anything, she looked relaxed, like she had nothing to hide anymore. I forced a neutral expression. Had a lot on my mind. She leaned against the counter, smirking. Yeah, maybe you should try getting out more. Clear your head. Clear my head. As if I was the problem. As if I were some clueless idiot who needed a change of scenery while she snuck off to be with my boss. I took a slow sip of my drink, watching her carefully. Where were you? She rolled her eyes. Out. No excuse. No cover story. She didn't even bother. And that's when I realized she thought I was weak. She thought I would just accept it. That I'd let her come and go as she pleased. That I'd swallow my pride and keep my mouth shut. She had no idea. Well, I hope it was worth it. Her eyebrow twitched, just for a second. I shrugged. Nothing. Just wondering if he treats you better than I do. For the first time all night, she hesitated. A flicker of something in her expression. Shock. Anger. Maybe even fear. But it was gone in an instant. Don't start, she muttered, turning to leave the room. I let her go. I wasn't going to waste my breath arguing with her. She had already made her choice. And thanks to Ryan, I had made mine. The next day, I went to work like nothing had changed. I sat in my office, answering emails, taking meetings, pretending that everything was fine. But the moment I saw him, the man who had been sleeping with my wife while signing my paychecks, it took everything in me not to react. Richard Lancaster. Cool. My boss. A man I had trusted, respected. Now, I saw him for what he really was, a smug, arrogant coward who thought he could have anything he wanted, including my wife. He barely looked at me as he passed my office, his usual cocky smirk on full display. Maybe he thought I was still in the dark. Or maybe he just didn't care. But that was about to change. By noon, Ryan texted me. We got something. Call me when you're alone. I locked my office door and dialed. Ryan didn't waste time. Dude, you're not going to believe this. Tell me. Jason got into her messages. She's been planning this for months. Talking about how she's going to divorce you. How she's going to make sure you get screwed in the settlement. She even asked Richard if he could pull some strings to make sure you lose your job. A slow, cold rage spread through me. She wants me fired? Oh, and it gets worse. Ryan hesitated. She's been transferring money. Small amounts. Spread out over different accounts. Looks like she's stashing cash before she makes her move. I clenched my jaw. So, she's not just cheating. She's trying to leave me with nothing. Yeah, and Richard's been helping her. I closed my eyes for a second, steadying my breath. Okay then. Let's make sure that when she leaves, she's the one with nothing. Ryan chuckled. Now you're talking. We spent the next hour laying out the plan, step by step, carefully calculated. I wasn't going to lose my temper. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to outsmart her. And when the time came, she wouldn't even see it coming. That night, I went home feeling different. Calm. Focused. The initial shock had worn off. Now I had clarity. She wasn't just betraying me, she was setting me up to fail. That changed everything. Hannah was already home, lounging on the couch with her feet up, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. She had no idea the ground beneath her was about to collapse. Hey, she said without looking up. Dinner's in the fridge if you want it. That was the extent of our conversation. No guilt. No attempt to explain herself. Just the cold detachment of someone who had already checked out of the marriage. Perfect. I sat down across from her, pretending to scroll through my own phone while, in reality, I was reviewing what Ryan had sent me. Bank transfers, messages, plans. Every piece of proof I needed was right in front of me. She thought she was being sneaky, slowly pulling money out, making arrangements to leave me in financial ruin. But she didn't know that I had already started working on a counterattack. And then I saw it. A message sent just 2 hours earlier. Hannah, I think he knows something. He's been acting weird. Richard, doesn't matter. Just stick to the plan. Once we move the rest of the money, we're good. He won't have a leg to stand on in court. I nearly laughed. They thought they were in control. They thought they were winning. But they had no idea I had already started stacking the deck against them. By Friday, she was packed. 2 suitcases by the door. A look of excitement in her eyes that she didn't even try to hide. I sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone while she put on her shoes. You sure you'll be okay while I'm gone? She asked in the fakest concerned voice I had ever heard. I almost laughed. Instead, I looked up and gave her a lazy smile. Of course. Take your time. She studied me for a moment. Maybe, for a brief second, she wondered why I wasn't begging her to stay. But then she shrugged it off. Good. I'll text you when I land. Another lie. She wasn't planning to text me. She wasn't planning to come back. I watched as she grabbed her suitcases and stepped out the door, practically skipping to the car waiting outside. And the moment the door shut behind her, I moved. While she was on her way to the airport, probably dreaming about her new life with Richard, I was sitting at my laptop, destroying everything she had set up. Bank accounts frozen. Her secret stash of transferred money legally seized and returned. Her access to savings gone. By the time she landed, she would be flat broke. And just to make sure she felt it immediately, I canceled her credit cards mid-flight. I wasn't just cutting her off. I was stranding her. The first call came in when she landed. I didn't answer. Then came a text. Hannah, hey, there's something wrong with my card. It's not working. Call me. Hannah, okay, this isn't funny. I can't access our account. What did you do? Hannah, call me. Now. I let her sweat for a few more hours. Then, finally I answered. Hey, Hannah. I said it casually, like I had no idea why she was panicking. Her voice was sharp, furious. What the hell did you do? I smirked. Oh, you mean the accounts you were slowly draining? Yeah. I caught on to that. And just like that, everything she had planned came crashing down. The silence on the other end of the line stretched. Then a sharp inhale. You have no right. I have every right. My voice was calm, steady. You thought I'd just sit here while you ran off with my boss, stole my money, and left me with nothing? She didn't respond right away. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. Then softer now, almost pleading. You don't understand. No, Hannah. I understand You bastard, she spat the second I answered. You ruined everything. I leaned back, stretching my legs. Did I? I thought you were off on some dream vacation with Richard. Her breathing was uneven, and for the first time, I heard panic in her voice. He left me. I smirked. Of course he did. What happened? I asked, feigning concern. A long pause. Then in a whisper, he said I was supposed to handle my own finances. He thought I had money. I almost laughed. So that was it. Richard never cared about her. He was only with her because he thought she was going to walk away with half of everything I had. The moment he realized she was broke, he cut her loose. Wow, I said, letting the sarcasm drip into my voice. That must be tough. Her voice wavered. You need to help me. I have nothing right now. I don't even have money for a hotel. I pretended to think about it. That's rough. But wasn't your whole plan to leave me with nothing? So, I guess this is what nothing feels like. You don't understand, she snapped. But I cut her off. Oh no, I understand perfectly. You thought you could use me, drain my accounts, and run off into the sunset with my boss. But guess what, Hannah? The only person who got played here was you. Silence. I could practically hear her breaking on the other end. Then, in a desperate whisper, please, just let me come home. Just for a few days. I let that hang in the air for a moment. The audacity. She betrayed me. She tried to destroy me. And now, after all that, she wanted to come back? I took a deep breath, then calmly said, Hannah, let me be absolutely clear. You are not welcome in my home. A few seconds of silence. Then I heard her fumbling, opening her phone, scrolling. And then a gasp. She found it. The divorce papers. Already filed. Already airtight. Already in my favor. No, she whispered. No, you can't do this. I already did. She started to cry, begging, pleading, talking about how she made a mistake, how we could work things out. I let her talk, let her humiliate herself. Then, when she finally stopped, when she was waiting for my response, I simply said, Goodbye, Hannah. And I hung up. I thought that was the end of it, that she would disappear, slink off into whatever miserable existence she had left. But I underestimated her desperation. The next morning, I got a text from HR. HR, hey, can you come in today? We need to discuss something important. I knew immediately Hannah wasn't going down without a fight. She had one last card to play. She was going to try and take my job. When I walked into the HR office, I wasn't surprised to see